Good morning once again, and welcome to Gunner Shot. Uh, Today, we're going to take a peek into everyday China, but we're going to examine if China is in the fragile zone. Why am I talking like this? Let me take your mind back to 2020. This cartoon appeared. How, if you see, it conveys hell of a lot. The Chinese economy, if you see, is driven by three engines: exports, investment, and consumption. Exports have tanked. The investment engine is on fire, and consumption is their main hope, and that is in danger. And the Chinese feel it has to work, but will it work is the big question. If it doesn't, China's economy is in for a long downward haul. Let me focus on an article which appeared in South China Morning Post in 2019. Before this, similar articles have appeared in many places. But in 2019, when this article appeared, there were a lot of halchal in China. What does it say? It says China exaggerated GDP by 2 percentage points for at least 9 years, as per a study. And this study was done naturally in US, but it was examined all over. And what came out of this was there were a lot of fake reporting in China. People at the bottom report fake news so that their performance is better and it is recognized as better, and hence the overall GDP is better. A typical communist attitude. So that's where things become interesting. And as per this article, if you see in detail, uh, that the size of the economy is about 18% lower than the official level of $13.4 trillion at the end of 2018. 6 years have passed. Now everyone says it's about 2000, $17 trillion economy. Is it really $17 trillion or 20% lesser? If it is 20% lesser, you're looking at about 12 to $13 trillion. So that brings a lot of equations into play, right? A stray article like this wouldn't matter much, and you could dismiss it. But sometime later, South China Morning Post itself came up, and this is facts. What did they say in this? China's provinces revised 2018 GDP estimates amid questions about economic data quality. So they internally did a quiet adjustment. And in this, all 31 of China's provinces have revised their GDP estimates, with at least 12 publishing smaller amounts than first reported. Right? So they have reacted. But overall, this has gone under the carpet, and after all, this was done 2 to 3 years later. Some hocus pocus adjustments should have taken place, and that was the end of the story. And now, 2020, you've seen that cartoon which came up, and everyone knows China's economy is driven by investment and needs to be driven by consumption, right? And exports are lagging. Okay, now you have a question mark on the GDP of China. China is having problems, we know it, but is it able to get over it or not? So, for that, you have to see what's happening now. And then you'll see whether there's a fragility in the Chinese system and the economy or not. Okay, have a look at this. This now, here onwards, all the articles and the news and everything which I'm giving is just about a week old. So, this is the latest. It can't be later than this. So it talks of the Chinese debt bubble, right, and property sector fatigue, and it says that they are driving the risk of an economic failure. Okay, now that's significant, right? Wuhan takes drastic measures to stop the rot in housing market at Beijing, Shanghai, and Shenzhen. Watch. Now, these 4, 5 cities are the major drivers of Chinese property sector. If they go down under, there's a problem. Now, you're talking of economic failure, you're talking of rot, you're talking of fatigue. Strong words coming out of a Chinese media platform, but they're there. They know it, right? They don't have a choice. You can only hide that much and no more. Okay, we all know that Pakistan is teetering on bankruptcy and IMF deal has not gone through. But why have I put this? Pakistan goes down, the CPI goes, CPEC go down. If CPEC goes down, BRI goes down. Flagship event. And at this point of time, it doesn't seem that the BRI will salvage itself. Now, this is a major thing for China, right? Follow it up. Look at this. Why did China's Belt and Road Initiative funding in sub Saharan Africa fall to historical lows last year? That means the BRI is collapsing. The funding is low. Flagship program in Pakistan is in trouble. Sub Saharan Africa is in trouble. Even in South America, which is the next focus area, is problematic. Southeast Asia also has been problematic. So the BRI, which was supposed to, take the Chinese economy to new heights, surplus capacity from China going abroad, money coming in, diplomacy going about, getting enhanced. The comprehensive national power of China was going up with the BRI. That's not happening, and everyone knows it. So we've studied property. Second, we've spoken of BRI, the second aspect of fragility. Now let's look at the third aspect of fragility. Again, a very interesting, headline. Couple of headlines. China's youngest millennials told they're too old for jobs, and elder generation Z workers are next. So there's a job problem. And then you see the right one. Labor demand shows signs of heating up as chip makers scramble to find talent. So on one hand, there's no talent. On the other hand, they have a problem of employment. What does it tell you? It tells you employment is hard. Why is employment hard? Because the productivity is down and manufacturing is down. So factories are closing up. Now, if factories are closing up, manufacturing is down, jobs are not there, everything is a problem. How will consumption go up? So I'll go back to that classic, this classic cartoon. What does it say? Three things: exports, investment, and consumption. So consumption is a big risk if you seen that those three articles, right? So the third issue: consumption is at risk, jobs are difficult, right? All these are pointers towards China's fragility. Okay, U.S. packaging firm Amcor closes down its plant in Shanghai. Yet another step in decoupling. Decoupling happens or continues, job losses, investment loss, or rather investment into China is gone, exports gone. And as of today, there's a huge glut in the global chip market, right? Chips are not being sold. Okay. The right article, China shipbuilding. It is supposed to be the number one shipbuilder in the world as of today. Okay. But it remains sluggish because there's no demand. Okay. Look at it from these are two things I've shown you: investment down, manufacturing also down, and mega manufacturing down in shipbuilding. Right. The next aspect of the fragility: China's biggest foundry, SMIC, sees profits fall by one fourth on waning demand for electronic gadgets. So their electronic sector, big tech sector, is also a problem. And remember, their big tech sector has been decimated by Xi Jinping's privatization drive 2 years back. He's already axed most of the big educational tech sector and the financial tech sector and the general tech sector. Right. Now, we all know what happened to China during the COVID phase. Right. Zero COVID, and zero COVID meant extra money spent to enforce zero COVID, the tracing, testing, vaccination routine. The local governments were stretched to that limit to cater for the zero COVID problems. And now they're having problems post zero COVID, right? See the second part of this headline. For China's officials, leaving zero COVID behind is far harder than enforcing it. They're not able to get over it. For 3 years, they lived with it. A whole lot of unemployment created just by taking zero COVID out. Very interesting things are happening in China, and unless we read them in detail, we will still think that China is a great power. Okay, this is what the IMF has told China: comprehensive reforms. The growth potential is there, but if the economy has to come back, you need comprehensive reforms. What is this comprehensive reforms? They're all contained in the 2012 report between the World Bank and China. Right? One of the key things is harmonious relations with the world. Tackle your population decline. Make it a market-oriented economy. Mr. Xi Jinping has done exactly opposite that. Okay, and the right article talks of persistent economic challenges expected in months following reopening. So all stories which you hear of the Chinese economy taking off, question marks, right? If you hear anything great about China happening, either it's state propaganda or state sponsored at this point of time. There it will recover and become an economic miracle is for time to tell. But at this point of time, I am very clear it will not happen. Right. Then their population. The population problem is so severe that not a day goes by without an article coming up. The left article is from South China Morning Post, right? Right. It says China population tumbling, birth rate leaves private kindergartens facing financial ruin. So even the schools are gone because there are no schools. How will you run a kindergarten? But the right article is significant. This comes from China Daily, the hardcore propagandist platform of China. It says declining births trigger call for action. All of put efforts needed to address low fertility rate. Experts say. So this is a burning problem of China, which it cannot get away. And there are, if you go into the China Daily article, it's very clear that they can't come out of it. So they are stuck. Right. This is the second aspect of the demographic problem they have. Elderly Chinese people protest in Wuhan against medical benefit cuts. They've made something, and I believe a lot of protests are happening in China on this issue. And this has happened in Wuhan. It is reported from elsewhere, but very surprisingly, mainstream media in China or even South China Morning Post has not reported this. It has come in Guardian and a lot of other things. But let's say there's some smoke under the fire, because it doesn't happen without that such a article comes out in Guardian. That means the aging problem is coming to the fore. We have always known that China's aging population doesn't have adequate medical care. Now they've done some tinkering, which has drawn a public reaction. Right. There's yet another issue about this whole protest. We had a protest against banks in Henan in August. November, there was a protest against COVID. Third, there is a protest against medical benefits for the aged. Right. And we all know the problems China went through during zero COVID. Put all these together. Is there something simmering underneath? Are these protests a harbinger of things to come? I've never heard of so many protests in a matter of less than 1 year in China. Right? So the fragility, overall fragility of China is what is coming forth. And these are not my own wild ideas. Again, I keep repeating. These are articles from South China Morning Post coming out. Right. You'll ask why that 2019 article was not shut out and all that. You have to remember there was a time when Jack Ma was at his peak and South China Morning Post was completely owned by Jack Ma. And there was some amount of talk, leeway he had to talk against the government. He spoke and then he got canned. After that, the tone has gone down, but the facts are coming out. Facts will come out one way or the other. It is for us to believe. In India, most of us believe what comes out from official China media or Chinese media or the unofficial version which comes out through China sponsored people, whether they are professors who have gone to China at their expense or paid here, or media which is paid here, or politicians who are paid here. I mean, I don't put it out of this thing, or other, you know, news channels through which you come to hear that China is great. But these are facts, and we have to analyze these facts in their totality. When the ship sinks, the rats escape. That's what this article is all about. China's crazy mega rich are moving their wealth and partying to Singapore. It's not only Singapore, Malaysia, Southeast Asia, Australia, and USA. This also represents a lot of talent. People who are studying abroad don't want to come back. That there's articles on that also. So if you're best and brightest who have gone abroad, not coming back, and people who are rich who have the capability and the initiative to create wealth are going out, your political system is at risk, and that's what many of them feel. Increasing fragility. Right now, I come to my favorite man in China. Now, 3 days back, this article came out. He says Xi Jinping hails China modernization miracle on path as the path for developing countries. He says this is a non-Western model of development which everyone should adopt. He is hard selling his case. In fact, he's hard selling his case for survival. And he's justifying his tenure. But if you look at it, and I've written about this, Xi Jinping has been the architect of Chinese decline in GDP. Ever since he's come to now, when he took over, the GDP was running at about 8 to 9%. Today, his GDP is less than 3%, China's GDP. He's destroyed the private sector completely. He's destroyed his tech sector completely. He's taken China to a state driven economy and a state driven model where Maoism, right, is the critical issue. Marxism is paramount. Suddenly, when the COVID thing hit him, he's changed tracks. For 2 years or 1.5 years, his common prosperity has ruined China. Today, no one hears about it. We don't hear about common prosperity, right? But You've seen the dichotomy. His wolf warriorism has changed. People, uh, they're more on the defensive. China as a whole is more on the defensive. Why? All these things are hurting China. And that is why I have put this as the new fragility in China. We have to watch out. Fragility in China will affect us. It is an opportunity for us to grow. It is also an opportunity for China to take action against us because China believes in externalizing its situation very fast. This is their history. They did it in Korea long back. They did it against us in 62, and they did it in Vietnam, and they externalized their situation in South China Sea. And of course, Taiwan is the other example. Why am I saying all this? Again, you have an opportunity and a risk. How we handle it is our deal. Lot to think. With this, I'll leave you for the day. Jai Hind.